Whoa, that's the wrong background. But what's going on, people, as I proceed to change this background from the Toronto Hoop Talk background to the Emotion Football background? Good to see everybody in the chat. How are you guys doing? We got an NFC Championship game and AFC Championship game preview we're going to get into. Won't be the longest stream. I anticipate maybe about 45 minutes. We're just going to get through with these games. I'll have another stream tomorrow where we'll do a coaching update stream. But yeah, I see King is in here. I see Brock is in here. We got Steve in here. Good to see Steve. When we do the coaching stream tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Bears, but they're putting together quite the coaching staff. And I see Gail is in here as well. So, you know what? I totally forgot to do the banners. I'm going to have to do this very quickly on stream. We got Commanders at Eagles minus 6.0. Awesome. I think that's the spread as of late. But here we are, people. So we're going to get into the first game immediately. We got Commanders Eagles, the NFC Championship game at 3 o'clock on Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. So this is obviously the third time these teams are matching up. Whenever you see divisional opponents in the playoffs, you usually see competitive games because the teams know each other so well. There's obviously there's 2 times that they played this year, but there's 2 times all the times in previous years that they've played. A lot of the overlap. In this game, there's I think a handful of Eagles as well. You got Ertz, Zacchaeus, who was on the Eagles last year. A lot of familiarity. So it's definitely going to be a close game. When you see a 6-point spread, even though I have the Eagles covering, spoiler for people who didn't know that I would pick the Eagles, but even though I have the Eagles covering, I don't think they'll win by much more than 6. But yeah, when it comes to that matchup, I think we can look at the Commanders when they have the ball. I guess the things to watch for when that's the case. First thing is obviously the Eagles are playing with a backup linebacker, or an Oren Burks, ex-Niners linebacker, playing because Nakobe Dean is hurt. I think that's probably the biggest area that the Commanders could target. What the Commanders do a really good job of is spreading out the field, putting everybody in space, and really making the defense have to guard every single blade of grass on the field. So when that's the case, it's hard for a defense to make mistakes, right? You don't have defenders close to each other where somebody can help when somebody makes a mistake. When a mistake gets made, you just got to pray. So you put a backup linebacker in space like that, particularly one that's not a great coverage linebacker. For those of you who aren't overly familiar with what happened to the Niners in the Super Bowl, Dre Greenlaw got hurt in the middle of the game, their star linebacker, and Oren Burks had to come in and play as a backup in the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs just targeted him the whole game. So the Eagles got a backup linebacker who's definitely going to be a liability, particularly with how the Commanders play. So I look at the Commanders, and I think that's one obvious weakness that they should be able to attack, and they should be able to attack effectively. But then the other, I guess, injury in this matchup that's going to be significant is the Commanders losing Sam Cosmi. So Sam Cosmi is the Commanders' best offensive lineman, one of their guards. He's out for the rest of the, obviously the rest of the year. There's not that many games left, but he tore his ACL. So that's a pretty big adjustment to have to make this late into the year. They're going up against the Eagles, whose defensive tackles have been good as a whole, but particularly Jalen Carter has been wrecking shop. I mean, I think he single-handedly won the game against the Rams for the Eagles. So I think about him having a matchup against a backup guard, and I think that if you flip it the other way, I look at the Commanders being able to target Oren Burks as a really big strength that they have. But I think the Eagles being able to target Sam Cosmi is a really big opportunity that they're going to have. So couple things to watch for there. Injuries are going to impact both sides of the ball. But as for other aspects of this game, I don't think the Commanders running backs are going to have a whole lot of success running the ball. I think in the first matchup, both of the running backs had success catching the ball or just even getting little dump offs in the flat and going for like 10, 15 yards. So I look at the running backs as maybe more threats in the passing game. I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of success running the ball up the middle between the tackles, especially with Sam Cosmi out. But in terms of the passing game and just generally when they want to throw the ball, I think Jaden Daniels obviously one of the better scramblers in the league. Had a hell of a day scrambling against the Eagles defense in the second matchup. I think that's going to be pretty successful. I think that Jaden is going to be running a lot. I think he's going to get a lot of yards. I think that's, again, with a backup linebacker, probably something the Eagles are going to struggle with. And then when it comes to the Commanders receivers, I think a part of what happened in that second matchup was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson not playing. He got thrown out of the game. I thought the first matchup was a lot more indicative of how our secondary matches up against their weapons. Terry McLaurin is amazing. The rest of the weapons in Washington are not. So I think when it comes to passing the ball, it's going to be more about the chess match, because I think the Eagles win there's a classic contrast of X's and O's versus Jimmys and Joes. When it comes to the passing game, I think the Eagles have the Jimmys and Joes matchup by far. It's going to come down to the chess match between Cliff Kingsbury and Vic Fangio. But as a whole, I mean, I like every matchup except for Terry McLaurin. And even Terry McLaurin, he was in check in that first matchup. Obviously, he was not in check in the second matchup. But if nobody gets hurt, nobody gets ejected, I like our chances defending the passing game. I think the two things that you're going to have to watch for here is the little short passing game, Terry McLaurin occasionally, and Jaden Daniels as a runner. So that's kind of how I see that side of the ball going. I think the Commanders are going to have their success, but also a big part of the reason that the Commanders had a great day against the Lions is because the Lions play an absurd amount of man coverage. Any ball knowers could tell you that man coverage against a running quarterback is a nightmare. And that's always been a weakness Detroit had. Whenever Detroit ran into a running quarterback, they always struggled. The area where they got kind of lucky is that it wasn't often that they would run into running quarterbacks, but when they ran into the Bills, Josh Allen scored 48 points. When they ran into, there was somebody else. I forget the other name off the top of my head. But the Eagles are the opposite. The Eagles run a lot of zone coverage, meaning all the defenders are looking forward. So when Jaden scrambles, again, he's going to have success because he's great, but he's not going to have the same tactical advantages he had against Detroit. Also, in the event that it does become about the Jimmys and Joes, so to speak, the Eagles have a much better secondary than the beat up Lions. So, I mean, I think that it'll be a classic. This matchup, when the Commanders have the ball, will be a classic case of, both sides are going to get theirs. The Commanders are going to have their moments. The Eagles defense are going to have their moments. So if I were to think about how many points I see the Commanders scoring, I got them scoring like 21 to 23 points. That's what I have happening in terms of their output. Now, to flip this and look at the other side of the ball, when the Eagles have the ball, I think the most important thing to think about is, can Jalen Hurts run the ball effectively? He tweaked his knee against the Rams. He didn't miss a snap. He had some moments after the knee injury where he looked okay, but then some moments where he didn't quite look like the same player. He's practiced throughout the week, so obviously that's a good sign. But what I would say about Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, is that Jalen Hurts having a great game is the idea of him having a big game heavily relies on his ability to run the ball. If Jalen can't run the ball, he's not going to have a great game. Now, the way we're set up as an offense, it's possible for our offense to have a great day while Jalen Hurts doesn't. How do I know that? Because I've seen it a lot this year. I've seen a whole lot of it. So, but I will say, if he's not healthy, he will not have a good day. He does not have good days as a passer when he doesn't run the ball. A part of what he needs to be an impactful thrower is he needs to threaten a defense with his legs to create advantages. Wink Martindale told him this to Jalen Hurts, like to his face. For those of you guys who might not know, Hurts reached out to Wink Martindale asking him, basically, what did Wink Martindale see in his tape that year in terms of how defenses adjusted to him? And the main thing Wink Martindale said is that we knew you couldn't run the ball because of your knee issue, so we didn't have to respect you as a runner. So then obviously he had a harder time finding open windows to throw to. So to bring it back to this game, that's going to be a huge component of how things go. How healthy is Jalen Hurts? I'm just going to say this. If Jalen Hurts is running like a healthy Jalen Hurts, I think we have a great day offensively. If he doesn't, then the possibility gets opened up for things to go left. So that's one thing to keep in mind. How is Jalen Hurts going to run the ball? When it comes to the running attack as a whole, our rushing attack there's no excuse for there not be production, because if you look at the stat here, right, or the chart here, Eagles rushing attack, one of the best in football. Commanders rushing defense, one of the worst in football. Now this is these are just dots, but to put this in perspective, the Eagles had the best rushing attack in football, I believe, maybe second best. And the Commanders had the 30th best rushing defense. So the third worst rushing defense in football. So this is something to consider. If Hurts can run, not only will it impact his passing, it'll impact Saquon running as well, because then he's a threat to keep the ball. It takes one defender away from defending Saquon. So there's a ripple effect to the impact of Hurts' running on this game. I think if Hurts runs the ball, he has a decent day passing, and we have an unreal day running, and we score a lot of points. So this is kind of how I see this game going. It's really contingent on Hurts' health. When it comes to our passing attack against their passing defense, I actually think the Commanders did a good job of keeping our passing attack in check in the first game. And then in the second game, it's hard to tell whether they had our passing attack in check because Kenny Pickett played most of the game. But even in that game, A.J. Brown had a lot of numbers. He actually did better against the Commanders with Pickett than Hurts, which is a weird thing. Lattimore racked up like 4 pass interferences against A.J. Brown. That one's kind of a tricky one. I think Lattimore and Sanders still are really good corners. I don't think Igbenogany in the middle is great. But then obviously there's the coaching battle. I will say this. I think the Commanders defensively have the coaching edge against the Eagles offensive coaches. I will just put that out there right now. So all things considered, man, I told you guys, I think the Commanders are going to score somewhere between 21 and 23 points. I think if Hurts is healthy, I think we score in the 28 to 31 range. And I think if Hurts isn't healthy, then we score in the 21 to 24 range. Like, I think we win a very close game if Hurts isn't healthy. And I think we win this game by roughly 7 if Hurts is healthy. I like how our offensive line matches up against their defensive line. And a big thing there is that Daron Payne is not healthy. So Daron Payne, their best defensive tackle, really their game changer in the middle of the defense when it comes to the line. He hurt his knee against Detroit and he hasn't practiced all week. So I'm sure he's going to play because there's nothing to lose in a matchup, there's no further matchups to rest for. Even if you have a 20% chance to play, if you're one of your team's best players, you play. So I think, am I freezing? Am I freezing? Shit. Okay. It doesn't show any connection issues on my side. Let me know in the chat if that's happening for anybody else. But yeah, so their best interior defensive tackle is hurt. He's going to play, but he's probably not going to be 100%. So that sucks. That sucks for them. Our center, Cam Jurgens, hasn't practiced all week either with a back issue. That's not great, but like their premier defensive tackle being hurt is more impactful than our center, who is probably our 4th best offensive lineman being hurt. Maybe, but we'll see. Gail says okay. So yeah, on the balance of things, I think very tight Eagles win and maybe a loss if Hurts isn't healthy. And like a 7-point win if Hurts is healthy. But like I kind of outlined, if you've been listening to everything I'm saying, the Commanders do have their areas where they're going to be able to succeed. This is not going to be a blowout. It's not going to be a one-sided game. It's not going to be a comfortable game. But I think at the end of the day, it's just 1 year too early for Washington. They're going up against a team that's been here before. And I do think that that'll shine through in a close game. I also think Washington they got their win out of their system. I don't think Washington's good enough to beat the Eagles twice. I think they've already shown that they're good enough to beat the Eagles once. But I like the Eagles in this matchup. Home field advantage should be the case. And yeah, if you just look at the stats in the general sense, you actually got some pretty similar outputs here when it comes to pass defense, points scored, and the rushing attack. The main gap is that the Commanders have a better passing offense, and then we just have a much better rushing defense and a significantly better defense in terms of points allowed. So yeah, we're not teams that are worlds apart. I know some people have suggested that the Eagles have a significantly better roster. They definitely have a better roster, but I wouldn't say significantly better. Yeah, should be a competitive game, an interesting game. And from this point, we're gonna move on to Chiefs and Bills, which I think is a 2-point spread now. I'm just gonna check that really quickly. Nope, it's still 1.5. So we got Bills at Chiefs bracket minus 1.5. Okay, so this is the really interesting one, people. So if you look at the stats in the comparison here, the Chiefs have marginal edges at 4 different stat categories. So pass defense, rush defense, basically as a defense as a whole, the Chiefs have the marginal advantages. And then in terms of passing, they have the marginal advantage. Where the Bills' advantages are is that they have not marginal advantages. They're healthily better at scoring points and rushing the football. So it's a pretty interesting set comparison from a stat standpoint. We got Disco Flash, one half of our duo of Chiefs fans in the chat. But yeah, this game is going to be really interesting. So, all right, let me get my thoughts out. I think the Bills. Okay, so basically, forget what I have to say. The Chiefs are 1.5-point favorites at home. For those of you guys who maybe aren't familiar with how Las Vegas thinks about things or how the gambling companies think about things, they view home field advantage as worth 3 points. So if the Chiefs are favorites by 1.5 at home, that means that essentially, if this was on a neutral field, Vegas would think that the Bills should be favorites by a little bit. So Vegas is telling you they think the Bills are a little bit better as a team, but the Chiefs are going to be favorites, probably because of home field advantage and because they're the Chiefs. As for what I think, I thought the Chiefs were actually getting into a good groove and they were getting their rhythm. And then they showed up against Houston and they didn't sustain what they showed against. Who are the 2 teams they played really good ball against? I think it was Pittsburgh and then either the team before or after Pittsburgh. I think it may have been the team before Pittsburgh. Then they showed up against Houston, and it really wasn't a clean game. It looked more like the Chiefs that everybody looked at and said, yeah, this team's winning, but they don't look the best. Now, a part of that could just be that Houston did that. Pittsburgh, and oh yeah, because it was Houston before Pittsburgh. You're right. Houston played a decent game against them in the playoffs, though. So as for where I think the Chiefs are at, I think the Chiefs are still at that point where they're not going to be winning games by blowing teams out, but they're obviously always going to be in games. If we think about this Buffalo team that's coming into Kansas City, I think their path to winning the game involves running the ball quite a bit. And that's where I think for them, they can't go down early. Like they cannot let the game take them away from running the ball. I'll put it this way. I think if they don't commit to running the ball, they have no chance of winning this game. But yeah, like here's the thing. When I talk about this game, I almost feel like this is a hard game to preview because so much of the stuff to talk about doesn't matter. Like hypothetically, I could sit here and tell you the Bills are better in most ways. It kind of doesn't matter because the things that the Chiefs are elite at are some of the most important things. Elite offensive coaching, elite defensive coaching, elite quarterback play. So when you have those 3 things, the other things you almost need everything else to go your way to even that up. And the thing is, I don't think everything else goes their way. I kind of think the Chiefs have better weapons in terms of the passing attack, right? So with the Bills, they have Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Amari Cooper, Curtis Samuel. Like they have a sampler plate of a lot of decent targets. But then the Chiefs have Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins, albeit both past their prime, but still good players. They have Worthy, they have Hollywood Brown. interesting. Like, I think they're comparable in terms of weapons, but I might take, like, for what it's worth, I might take the connection that Travis and Mahomes have in these moments as a almost like a little boost that bumps them ahead of Buffalo. Because for everything that people have to say about Travis, he still got like 150 yards in the playoffs against Houston. I want to say his best game of the year. And there's something about playoff time and Mahomes and Kelsey. So that's something to think about. If you talk about offensive lines, the Bills' offensive line is definitely better. If you talk about defenses, I think the Chiefs' defense is better. And the stats tell you that they're a little bit better. And I think they're better. So this is the thing, right? I think the Bills, they don't have the better quarterback. They don't have the better offensive coach. They don't have the better defensive coach. They don't have the better defense. So this is why when you look at what the Bills do have, really it's the rushing attack. That's the big advantage they have over Kansas City. And then I don't think they have the better weapons. Somebody could make the case that they do. Whether that's the case, I don't know. So I say this all to say, if they don't run for like 200 yards, I don't see them winning this game. Now, if they do, they still might lose because the Chiefs just have black magic on their side. They just crazy things happen. But I say this to say, look at these numbers, people. Do you think Buffalo can go into Kansas City and win with the worst defense? Like, does that make sense to anybody? I don't see it, man. I just don't see it. So hold on. Wait. It's not like the Bills stuff is so behind the Chiefs. No, you're right. But it's not ahead. You're absolutely right that it's not that far behind them, but it's also not ahead. Imagine wanting the Chiefs to win. Brother, who told you I wanted the Chiefs to win? Who said this to you? Let me know. Whoever told you that, let me know so I can smack them around. They need to stop feeding you misinformation. They did already announce their turn to lose, go home feeling empty. Okay, fair enough. Besides, like, their defense. No, yeah. So this is the thing. I'm just talking about the defense, bro. I'm just talking about the defense. Like, because clearly what the Bills have better than the Chiefs is the rushing attack. That's the big thing. And generally they have more points because they have a much better rushing attack. Man said, oh, Taz told you, man, next time Taz is in the chat, he's got to get cussed out. Also, I haven't seen Taz yet. He told me my Eagles were getting eliminated in the first round. I think sometimes it's about which team wants it more. What are your thoughts on this for both playoff games? Are you doing both games? Yes, I'm doing both. I will gladly be paid to be a Chiefs fan and get changed nothing. That's hilarious. Okay, in terms of teams wanting it more, I think the want advantage. Okay, you know what? This kind of introduces a good conversation. I think we can look at want and pressure. I think the Eagles are going to want it more than the Commanders because the Eagles lost to the Commanders and the Commanders have been talking a whole lot of shit after the fact. So I actually think that the Eagles' desire for get back or like revenge is a much bigger than that gives the Eagles the wanted advantage. But here's what Washington has. Washington has the advantage of having absolutely no pressure. The Eagles, there's a lot of pressure to win. Sirianni is under fire. Hurts is under fire. The idea of losing to your division rival with a rookie quarterback, that's at home. That's some of the most embarrassing shit, right? So, bro, there's so much pressure on the Eagles. There's zero pressure on the Commanders. They've already exceeded their expectations. They've already had an amazing season. Their rookie could not their rookies. The praise that he's getting up to this point, like it couldn't possibly be anymore. So the gap, like the Eagles want the game more, but they have way more pressure on them. When it comes to this game, though, Chiefs Bills, I think it's actually kind of a similar dynamic. I think the Bills are probably gonna Commanders lose a close game to the Eagles. Bills lose field goal. Hold on. Oh, he's talking to Brock. But bro, Disco Flash, you weren't here for the watch along, so you don't get the inside joke here. Basically, throughout the Eagles game against the Packers, Brock was in the chat talking shit the whole stream. And the Eagles had a good time. Like the game was good for the Eagles for the most part, right? Then what happened is he was talking shit about the Eagles for the first quarter of the game against the Rams. And I just kept telling him, I'm like, the more you talk shit, the worse, the better this is for the Eagles. Please keep talking shit. And then once he said that, or once I told him that, he started propping up the Eagles, and the Rams game went to shit. So Brock is actually trying to curse the Eagles by talking like this. And Disco Flash, I'm very, very, very happy for you. Or like, I'm very happy that you're in the chat trying to steer him the other way. Because I want him back on the other side. I want him to hate the Eagles. Things were going great for the Eagles when he was hating on us. Ever since he started being nice to us, things have gone bad. So I really don't want him at all to be. I look, I ain't super superstitious either, but the results are the results. If Washington wins, the glazing will be heard for months. Bro, the glazing will happen for months and be heard for years. But yeah, so back to this. I think the Bills. Here's the thing. I think there's way more pressure on them because the one-sidedness of this rivalry in the playoffs just keeps building and building. If you lose 4 in a row to the Chiefs, right? Like it just the what is it? What's the expression? The monkey on their back? It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The Chiefs, I don't actually think there's pressure on the Chiefs. Like the Chiefs are proven. The Chiefs are established. Nobody is going to, like, if the Chiefs lose, nobody's going to say, oh, they're frauds. Oh, they can't get it done. If the Chiefs lose, it'll just be like, oh, they lost. We'll see what they can do next year. They're probably going to win the year after. There's no pressure on the Chiefs. All the pressure is on Buffalo. But in terms of who wants it more, I think the want in this game, is probably even. Like the Bills' desire to finally beat the Chiefs is probably as much as the Chiefs' desire to go on and win a 3rd Super Bowl, especially because Mahomes, like, he called his shot at the last parade. He mentioned that there's going to be he's like, we're going to go win the 3rd one too. We're going to be the first team to three-peat. So I think the want is the same in this matchup, but the pressure is different. Find my door. Wait, what does find my door mean? But yeah, man, in this game, just to get back to a prediction, I got the Chiefs winning by 4. I don't think it's going to be that high scoring of a game. I'm thinking 24-20. But yeah, so I got the Chiefs winning by 1.5. And like I said, man, I think the team with a better defense than the quarterback is going to get the win. It's not really in the Chiefs' style to win by like 10 to 14 points. So I do think they're just going to get the 4-point win. But yeah, I think we're gonna okay, hold on. They beat us already. I really, really want to win 3 in a row. How much more do you do you need from us? Yeah, for sure. For sure, bro. The 3 in a row want is gonna be serious. It's not in the playoffs, yo. Again, King always has the emojis for every team. So that's my thing. I got the Chiefs winning. Like I said, better defense, better quarterback. The Bills' pronounced advantage is the rushing attack. If they don't sit on the ball, rush the ball 30 times, get 200 yards, get like 37 minutes of time of possession, like that's their one path of winning. In every other kind of game, the way that this game could turn out, the Chiefs win, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm going to take this off the screen. And I'm going to share another screen, and we are going to get back into graph mode. So what I'm going to do here is I got the two lines here. What am I doing here? The 2 lines, and basically the one of the lines is about weaknesses, and basically how many weaknesses does the team have for the other team to exploit, versus the other line, which is a tendency to beat yourself. So like, this isn't about the weaknesses that the other team could take advantage of. It's about the things that you just do to yourself to play yourself. So we're gonna make it bigger so it's easier to read. But we're just gonna wrap up on this, people. Like I said, this was always gonna be a short stream. We're gonna be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern to do. It's probably gonna be a longer stream where we're just gonna talk through all the coaching news because there's a lot to talk about. But yeah, that's what we're gonna do tomorrow. But yeah, so we're just gonna close it out with this. So Commanders, here's how I look at the Commanders. I actually don't think the Commanders beat themselves. I think that they actually have, like, through this playoffs, what I've seen, they do a great job of, like, Jaden's not really turning it over. They're not doing these self-inflicted errors. They're playing smart football. So I don't actually think they beat themselves quite a bit. I just don't think they have hold on. This should be the opposite, because it's always better to be higher up. Less weaknesses to target, more weaknesses to target. But I guess with the Washington, the thing is like they have pronounced weaknesses: horrible rushing defense, lackluster weapons. Lackluster weapons, okay offensive line. Like, that's the thing about the Commanders. I think a part of what they've done to get here, is just not beat themselves. Against Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield fumbled the ball. They beat themselves. Against Detroit, Goff turned it over and over again. They beat themselves. I think the main thing Washington has done so far is just showed up and not got in their own way. So I'm going to give them a lot of credit for not beating themselves, but I don't want to give them a lot of credit in terms of being a complete team that doesn't have weaknesses. Now, they got their weaknesses. They're just like, they're going to make you play a disciplined, good, steady game. So that's where I'm going to put them. Eagles, they're going to be far on the side of will beat themselves, man. I think the Eagles are in a pretty good spot of, like, I don't think the Eagles have a ton of weaknesses for other teams to target. You could maybe say that, like, blitzing Jalen Hurts is a good thing. And now with Nakobe Dean hurt, there's one linebacker spot. Occasionally the defense plays too soft. I don't think the Eagles have a ton of weaknesses to present to the other team. The Eagles' main issue is that they're their own worst enemy. They will make mistakes. They will. I mean, to be honest, Sirianni hasn't made a bad fourth down decision in a long time. I want to say it's been a couple months. So that's maybe less so. But Jake Elliott will miss extra points. Guys, also, I found something out recently that is very interesting considering the chats we've been having about Jake Elliott. So Jake Elliott has missed 3 kicks in the playoffs, but they've all been extra points. So Jake Elliott actually is still perfect as a postseason kicker. He's 22 for 22 on field goals in the playoffs, but he's just missed extra points. I think he's missed like 5 extra points in the playoffs. So Jake Elliott has this weird thing going on of he's an undefeated is the wrong way to put it. He's a perfect playoff kicker from field goals, but he still scares the shit out of me. I don't know how it's possible for me to be this scared of a kicker that has not missed a field goal in the playoffs. 22 for 22 is impressive, and including kicks in the snow. But man, the extra points scared the shit out of me. So the Eagles, man, between the kicking game, between like just the bad play calls every now and then, the Eagles definitely, I'm gonna put them far on the side of they can beat themselves. And that's like ultimately my biggest fear as an Eagles fan. Like, I'm not really scared of Washington. I'm scared of Philadelphia on Sunday. So that's where I'm gonna put them. And then Kansas City, I think Kansas City also deserves to be pretty far on this side. Actually, I would go on to say Kansas City needs to be the farthest team in terms of not beating themselves. Like, Mahomes hasn't been turning it over. I think he's on a run of like 8 straight playoff games without a turnover or something like that. They're not going to defeat themselves with bad coaching. The Chiefs are just not going to beat themselves. In terms of having weaknesses, the thing is like they do have more weaknesses than the Eagles in terms of like they have a offensive line that has issues. Their defensive personnel, they're like their second corner. I mean, I think that's less of an issue now because they got healthier. But like the Chiefs have more holes for sure. But the Chiefs are just never going to beat themselves at all. So I'm going to put the Chiefs again slightly below the Eagles when it comes to having weaknesses for the other team to target. But obviously the Chiefs are going to be as far as they could possibly be on the side of not beating themselves, which is ultimately why most people feel like confident about them in the playoffs. And then the Bills I'm going to say are, in terms of weaknesses, I'm going to put them kind of like below Kansas City. And then in terms of beating themselves, they're in this realm. They're in this realm here. Like, Josh Allen hasn't been turning it over in the playoffs. The coaching has been solid. Ever since they fired that last offensive coordinator, they've stopped doing dumb shit in terms of play calling. You know what? Maybe they could be a touch lower. But yeah, basically Buffalo, they're not as good. You know what? Maybe they should be on par with Washington. Yeah, Buffalo, again, pretty good job of not beating themselves. Eagles all alone, man. Like the Eagles are the only team left that you're scared of. Like, man, they could be a better team and still lose the game. Like you almost feel like when the Chiefs show up or the Bills show up and they're the better football team, that they're just gonna get the job done. There's no guarantee about that with the Eagles. So yeah, we got some disciplined, solid teams on the left, and then we got the Eagles, who again are probably the best team in terms of just being well-rounded. Their issue is that like you just cannot trust that they won't do something to lose the game for themselves. So yeah, this is how we're gonna end off the stream, people. Um, last week showed that 100%. Last week showed that, man, that game had no business being that close, and that's why, like, as an Eagles fan, I'm in a spot where like I don't really even think too much about these games because I just know what the deal is. I know what the deal is, bro. Like, we're gonna show up. We're probably like we're a very good team, but we just might fuck it up. So like, there's nothing to stress about. There's no like deep thinking to do about like, oh, um, like are we gonna have the tactical advantages? Are we gonna have the better players? Like, you don't need to do a deep dive into the game. The Eagles are probably better, and they also probably have the best chances of fucking it up for themselves. So that's how we're gonna close this stream off, people. We're gonna have a great time watching football on Sunday. Like I said, I will be back 6 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow to talk about coaching and all the changes that have been happened. And then I'm gonna have 2 live streams on Sunday for both games. So that's where we're at. We're gonna have a lot of fun this weekend, people. Last weekend of multiple football games. After this weekend, there will only be 1 game left. So make sure you guys make the absolute most of this weekend. I will see you guys around. Hopefully everybody's in the chat for all the streams. That'll be the best possible outcome. But yeah, I'll see you guys around. You guys take care. I'm out.